Okay, so if you are practicing family therapy, there are some things that might come up that you need to be familiar with. And when it comes to malpractice, the very first issue listed here, you want to be making sure that you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing and that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. You want to be able to keep good records, and we'll talk more about how to keep records in family counseling as we move through this semester. You want to make sure that you maintain a liability insurance policy so that if you're ever taken to court, your own personal worth and belongings are not able to be assumed or seized by a court. And then the next issue that you need to be really familiar with is about child abuse, and that you are a mandated reporter in the state of North Carolina. Everybody is a mandated reporter of child abuse, but as a family counselor, as somebody who does counseling, you might actually have to provide testimony about what constitutes abuse. So if you're ever working with a family and they are parenting in a way that is overly harsh, or you're not sure if their spanking is escalating to the point of being abuse, then you definitely want to consult. If you're going to have to make a report, it's a good idea to advise the family about when. Part of your informed consent process will be letting the family know that if they disclose abuse to you, that you're going to have to report it. So a family that's actively trying to do better needs to know in advance that if they tell you about things that constitute abuse, then you're obligated to report that abuse, which will then trigger the social services in the region to open an investigation, and they will actually be the ones to determine if the claim that's being made is founded or unfounded. Um, no matter, while there is some variation from state to state, abuse reporting is required no matter where you work. So you're all mandated reporters, and whatever state you go into, you're going to be mandated to report any kind of child abuse. The child custody issues are a little bit trickier, and that was the situation that I was involved in when I had to go to court for one of the families that I worked with. It was a parent who had their custody rights taken away. Their children were in foster care, ended up being placed in a long-term foster situation. The parent re-entered their lives and was trying to regain custody. And as the family counselor, I was required to take the stand and to make us the and to was requested to try to make some statements about what was in the best interest of the children in that situation. And if you ever are called into court, you really want to consult, talk to a supervisor, get a lot of information, know whether or not you want child custody issues to be a major part of your caseload or not. So some family counselors will be very specific and upfront with their clients and say, I am not going to be, I'm not going to take on the role of being a child custody evaluator. And that's really important for you to know for yourself when you're doing family work, if you want to get involved in those things or not. And if you do decide to get involved with that, then you would want to consult with an attorney to um, to see about your role as a child custody evaluator, and really be able to clarify how you make those decisions about what's in the best interest of the child, not which parent you seem to like the best, but what's in the best interest of that child. All right, let's go on to talking a little bit about managed care. Managed care can get a little bit messy in family counseling because of how third-party payers are set up to reimburse. And what happens sometimes with managed care is that the family doesn't have the insurance policy. All of the individuals in the family have the insurance policy. So does the individual insurance policy cover family counseling? If you're doing family counseling, then you should be billing for family counseling and not billing for individual counseling under the say problem child. If Likewise, if you're doing one-on-one counseling, you should not be billing for family counseling. And improper coding and filing and billing can get counselors into trouble and can even in extreme cases end up in getting your license revoked. So you want to be really clear about the work that you're doing and how that you're reporting it with any third-party payers like an insurance company or Medicaid in the appropriate way. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the recording by talking a little bit about professional identification and the characteristics of who marriage and family therapists are. So in North Carolina, the scope of practice as a licensed professional counselor does include the ability to provide couples counseling and family counseling. In North Carolina, an entirely separate board regulates the LMFT credential, and the LMFT credential is the Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist credential. There are less than 1,000 LMFTs in North Carolina, whereas there are several thousand LPCs. So there are many, many more LPCs in North Carolina than there are LMFTs. Some people hold both of the credentials. My personal bias and preference would be for all of you to pursue your LPC, but if you want to specialize in doing work with families or couples, then you may want to, even though your scope of practice as an LPC includes the ability to do that work, you may want to consider pursuing the LMFT so that you can demonstrate to the public that that is a specialty expertise of yours, that to work with couples and families. So some quick facts that are discussed in your book. Across the country, there's over 50,000 licensed MFTs, but again, like I said, there's less than 1,000 in North Carolina. Most MFTs have a master's degree. Fewer of them have a doctorate. A lot of them work in private practice, about half. Others work in institutional settings, and others work in both, back and forth. Most marriage and family counselors will work in the evenings and work on weekends. And that's because if you're doing family work or you're doing couples work, it's really hard for an entire family to take the day off from work and from school and to get everybody into the counseling office. So it's much more likely that if you are an LMFT or you're an LPC doing primarily family and couples work, that you're going to need to be able to offer some weekend and evening hours just to accommodate the type of client that you have. Most 91% of MFTs, according to your book, are white, and about 60% of them are women. So it's not an incredibly diverse population of practitioners. In family counseling, the typical session will last about an hour, whereas in individual work, you usually think of one session as lasting about 45 to 50 minutes, but in family counseling, there's more people to talk to, there's more stories to draw out, so it is usually a little bit longer. Now, some family counselors do in-home family counseling at the paraprofessional or bachelor's level when they're supervised by a licensed practitioner, and at that level they're really focusing on psychoeducation, on skill building, on parenting techniques and things, but those sessions that are done during in-home family counseling appointments are even longer. So a lot of the problems that a family therapist would work with would be the obvious ones: couple problems, family relationship issues, but also a specific mental health issue. And as you learned when you were studying in a previous chapter, the history of family counseling, the profession really grew out of some more serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia. But now it's much more common for marriage and family therapists and licensed professional counselors who are doing this type of work to focus on the issues that are more pervasive in our population, more common: mood disorders, anxiety disorders, adjustment disorders. And they really, I think a lot of family counselors will work from the point of view that that a mental illness diagnosis might be a feature of there needing to be interpersonal changes that happen in the family system, and not just dealt with an intrapsychic phenomenon. Let's see what else to cover from there in family counseling. There are specific journals that are associated with the branch of family psychology, and then there's family counseling journals that would fall under our discipline that run through the American Counseling Association, whereas the family psychology journals run through the APA, or the American Psychological Association. And then there's the AAMFT, which is the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. So each of these different disciplines have probably more in common than they have different, but nevertheless it is kind of a divided field, and there are different professional associations and different journals that articulate the work that goes on within all of those, and that kind of plays out at the board level within states and within licensure laws and areas and things. And just to wrap up this video, so we what you know, the ethics and the things that we've covered here, they're not so different than what you've learned in your 5,000 level course, and working with individuals, adults and children, and practicing ethically. But what I want you to take away from this is that the legal issues and the ethical issues are just much more complex in a family situation, because you're working with adults and children at the same time. And I really want you to be thinking of the family as a whole as your client, and not the individuals in it. So you might have a family where there's really poor parents, and you feel closely, not, and I don't mean poor as in their financial status, that they're just not good parents, and you're needing to help improve that whole family structure, and not just try to make the child feel better, but you want to improve the whole family, because ultimately in the long run that child is going to continue to be raised by those parents. So you can't just work on the self-esteem or the mood of the child. You have to work on helping the parents, and so you look at the family as a whole and try to think of what is the goal for this family, and what is the ethical decision making that I need to do for the whole family. Sometimes what might benefit one person might not benefit everyone. So ethically, what would benefit the whole family, and how can you organize your practice and the work that you do to move that whole family forward? A lot of times when families come to you for help, and they're coming in as the whole family unit, they already think in their mind that one person in this family is the problem. A lot of times it's a child with a behavior disorder or behavior issue. And so those parents or guardians are coming in and they're thinking, we need to get this kid fixed, and then everything will be okay. And your job as the family counselor is to join with the whole family, and to see that presenting child's issues within the context of the whole family group, not just to do the behavior corrections for the child, but to really look at the family as a unit. And that's what I was hoping that y'all would start to get at with the team discussion board from the previous week, where you were looking at functional and dysfunctional characteristics and giving each other some feedback about how to promote the functional ones in the family unit as a whole. So that movement from looking at things intrapsychically at an individual level to looking at everything interpersonally. That is just the crux of what family counseling is about.